Good morning. Today, we turn our attention to a pivotal moment in the ongoing saga of U.S.-China trade relations. On November 3, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear a challenge from thousands of American companies seeking to overturn tariffs on Chinese imports. This decision, made quietly but with enormous consequences, sent ripples through the business community and global markets alike. By refusing to take up the case, the court cemented the tariffs as a permanent fixture in U.S.-China trade, impacting over $300 billion in goods each year. These tariffs, first imposed several years ago, have now become a defining feature of international commerce between the two economic giants. Major companies like Ford, Tesla, and the Home Depot led the charge, arguing the tariffs were unlawfully imposed and financially damaging. They claimed the extra costs were being passed on to American consumers and threatening jobs across multiple industries. By refusing the case, the Supreme Court upheld lower court rulings that favored the government, confirming the executive branch's broad authority over trade disputes. This decision reinforces the president's power to act decisively in matters of international trade, even when those actions are controversial. The legal battle involved more than 3,600 companies and highlighted the deep economic impact of these policies. For many, the fight was about more than just money. It was about fairness, predictability, and the rules that govern global business. Now, businesses of all sizes must adapt to a landscape where these tariffs, and their costs, are here to stay. Small businesses, in particular, face tough choices as they navigate higher expenses and shifting supply chains. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit's decision stands as the final word, closing the door on further legal challenges for now and setting a precedent for future trade disputes. For many companies, this is a disappointing end to a long and costly legal fight. The hope for relief through the courts has faded, leaving them to reassess their strategies in a changed environment. The chapter on this trade conflict is closed, but the story of global trade continues. As businesses and policymakers adjust, a new era in international commerce begins, one shaped by the lasting impact of these historic tariffs. To understand today's news, we need to look back at the roots of the current trade tensions between the United States and China. We need to revisit the origins of these tariffs, which have shaped global commerce and international relations for years. The Trump administration launched them to confront what it called decades of unfair Chinese trade practices, especially intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers. U.S. officials argued that China's rapid economic rise was fueled in part by policies that disadvantaged American companies and workers. Tariffs were meant to make Chinese goods more expensive, encouraging U.S. companies to shift manufacturing elsewhere and pressuring China to negotiate. The hope was to level the playing field and protect American jobs, especially in industries hit hard by foreign competition. The policy rolled out in phases, eventually covering everything from industrial parts and electronics to toys, clothing, and even everyday household items. No sector was left untouched, and the impact rippled through the entire economy. This marked a dramatic shift from decades of free trade toward a more protectionist approach, signaling a new era in U.S. economic policy. The immediate result was global supply chain disruption and higher costs for American businesses and consumers. Companies scrambled to adapt, and shoppers saw prices rise on everything from electronics to clothing. The administration gambled that long-term gains would outweigh short-term pain, betting that tough measures would force China to change its practices. The tariffs became a central tool in a high-stakes economic standoff, with both sides imposing countermeasures and negotiations often stalling. This aggressive strategy set the stage for years of legal and political battles, as lawmakers, courts, and businesses all weighed in on the consequences. Today's Supreme Court decision is the latest chapter in that ongoing story, highlighting just how far-reaching and complex the tariff debate has become. The tariffs sparked fierce opposition from a coalition of over 3,600 American companies. These companies, spanning various industries, banded together to voice their concerns and challenge the government's decisions. Industry giants like Ford, Tesla, the Home Depot, and Walgreens argued the tariffs forced them to choose between absorbing costs or raising prices. This dilemma put immense pressure on their operations and financial stability. Many felt trapped in a no-win situation, squeezed by higher expenses and competitive pressures. The increased costs threatened their competitiveness both domestically and internationally. Their legal argument focused on the timing, They claimed the government exceeded its authority by imposing later rounds of tariffs after a one-year deadline. This legal nuance became the crux of their case. The lawsuit, led by HMTX Industries LLC, wasn't about opposing accountability for China, but about following the rule of law. They believed that the administration had overstepped its legal boundaries. They argued the administration had to stick to procedures set by Congress. This adherence to procedure was crucial for maintaining a predictable business environment. The companies sought predictability and relief from mounting financial pressure. They needed a stable environment to plan their investments and operations effectively. Their case was a plea for lawful, stable trade policy. They hoped that a favorable ruling would bring clarity and stability to the business landscape. Ultimately, the court sided with the government, not the businesses. This decision was a significant blow to the coalition's efforts. The coalition's fight highlights the real-world impact of trade policy on American industry. The tariffs have reshaped the economic landscape, affecting countless businesses. For these companies, the legal defeat means adapting to a new, more expensive reality. They must now navigate this challenging environment and find ways to remain competitive. The hope for relief through the courts has ended. The companies now face the daunting task of adjusting their strategies to survive and thrive in this new economic climate. At the heart of this dispute is Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. This law empowers the U.S. government to investigate and respond to unfair foreign trade practices. The U.S. Trade Representative, USTR, can impose tariffs if another country's actions harm American commerce. The Trump administration used Section 301 to justify tariffs after finding China guilty of unfair practices. The legal challenge didn't dispute the initial use of Section 301, but argued the administration overstepped by expanding tariffs beyond the law's timeline. Companies claimed the USTR had only 12 months to act, but later tariffs came after that window. The government countered that these were modifications, not new actions. This disagreement over Section 301's rules became the central legal question. The courts ultimately sided with the government's broader interpretation. Section 301 remains a powerful tool in U.S. trade policy. The company's legal journey ended with the courts upholding the government's authority. The Federal Circuit ruled that later tariffs were permissible modifications, not new actions, under Section 301. This interpretation gave the executive branch flexibility to adjust its response as the trade conflict evolved. The court affirmed that the USTR has broad discretion to modify tariffs in ongoing disputes. The Supreme Court's refusal to hear the case effectively endorsed this view. The decision wasn't about the merits of tariffs, but about the legality of the process. For businesses, this was the end of the legal road. The government's approach to tariffs is now firmly backed by precedent. The ruling strengthens the executive's hand in future trade disputes. The tariffs remain lawful and in force. The legal precedent is set for future administrations. When President Biden took office, many expected a shift in trade policy. Instead, the Biden administration kept the Trump-era tariffs in place, signaling bipartisan support for a tough stance on China. Officials argued that removing tariffs would weaken U.S. leverage in negotiations. The administration defended the tariffs in court and launched its own review of U.S.-China trade. In May 2024, Biden not only maintained but increased tariffs on strategic Chinese imports, like electric vehicles, chips, and medical supplies. The goal: protect key American industries and national security. This marked a shift from simply punishing China to proactively shielding U.S. sectors from low-cost competition. Tariffs became a tool of industrial policy, not just retaliation. The Biden administration's actions show a confrontational trade posture is now a long-term U.S. strategy. No matter who's in the White House, tariffs on China are here to stay. The Supreme Court's decision locks in higher costs for American businesses. Tariffs are paid by U.S. importers, not Chinese exporters, directly hitting company profits. Small businesses in particular struggle to absorb or pass on these costs. Many have restructured supply chains, moving production to countries like Vietnam or Mexico, a costly and complex process. For some products, alternatives to Chinese manufacturing simply don't exist. Companies often have no choice but to pay the tariffs, putting them at a disadvantage globally. The impact varies by industry. Automakers face higher parts costs. retailers pay more for inventory, and tech firms see delays in price hikes. The ripple effect spreads throughout the economy. Tariffs have forced businesses to rethink strategies and pricing. The new normal is a more expensive, less predictable business environment. Ultimately, it's American families who feel the impact of tariffs. Higher import costs are passed down to consumers, raising prices on everyday goods, from shoes to electronics to furniture. Even small price increases add up, acting as a hidden tax on households. Families on tight budgets are hit hardest, with less money for essentials. Studies show the financial burden falls mostly on U.S. consumers and businesses, not China. For example, a 25% tariff on imported furniture means higher prices at every step, ending with the customer. This chain reaction repeats across thousands of products. Tariffs directly translate into higher costs for Americans nationwide. Trade policy isn't just about politics, it's about what you pay at the store. The Supreme Court's decision signals a new era in U.S.-China trade. Tariffs are now a mainstream, legally defensible tool for economic policy. Future administrations have a strong foundation to use tariffs to protect U.S. industries. The free trade consensus has given way to strategic competition. Businesses must now plan for tariffs as a permanent cost. This will accelerate supply chain shifts away from China and boost investment in other regions. The U.S.-China relationship is now defined by rivalry, not just partnership. Both countries are racing to build technological and economic independence. The debate is no longer about whether to be tough on China, but how. The next chapter will be shaped by a more fragmented, competitive global economy,